blog and YouTube channel, FreetoFlower.com, where I share all about simple living on our European farm, homesteading how-tos, and recipes from scratch. Please hit the subscribe button down below to never miss a new video. My favorite time of the year, fall, has finally come to our European homestead. Now, we're not fully in the throes of it yet. As you can see, I'm still wearing a summer dress. The temperatures are still pretty hot, which I'm also cherishing because I know that winter is coming and we will be cold for a really long amount of time. But I am so ready for the leaves to start turning beautiful golden and reds. It's my favorite time of year. My birthday's coming up and I'm excited to cherish all of it. Today I'm taking you along for a day on the homestead in early fall, and I'll be sharing with you all the different things that we are doing to prepare for this lovely season. First things first, I've been working on some home organization, and while this is a really big project for me for the winter time when we can't really do things outside as much as we normally do, I started with some simple little things already. I'm always trying to make our home a little bit more cozy, more farmy feeling, and just really work on the feeling of home, both for myself and my family. One really easy thing that I've been doing is just transferring everything out of plastic bags into glass jars. Sometimes they're really cute, little mason jars like the one you just saw me putting my black tea into. Other times I just use glass jars that I bought at the store with, let's say, pickles or something else, and reused them. They're not as cute, but they serve a great purpose, and then later on when I do feel like buying a giant amount of super cute mason jars, I'll just be able to switch them over really easily. I actually have a whole video coming up with me decluttering a bunch of our drawers and doing exactly that, so I will link it down in the description box below when that is ready. This is a really neat little trick that you can do just to make your kitchen look a little bit more uniform and put together, and to instill that homemade feel, even for things that you can't necessarily make at home, like black tea. All right, taking my supplements over here. I'm huge on beef liver and other beef organs for hormone balance, energy, all that stuff. I first discovered this when I was pregnant with my first son, and I was running a little bit low on iron. At the time, my home birth midwife said that I would have to go on iron pills, but I said, please, give me a chance to do some things naturally, and then let's test again. So I went and I started eating a bunch of beef liver, molasses in my smoothies, and also beef liver and organ supplements. Lo and behold, my next labs came out perfect. Now, this was back in the time when I subscribed to home birth midwives and their quote-unquote authority when I had hired one. That ended with a horrible result. If you'd like to know more about that, I have several videos all about my birth stories, both my failed home birth and my glorious redemptive free birth that I did with my second son almost exactly a year ago. What would fall be without some delicious soups? Like I mentioned in some previous videos, I have a whole giant compilation of Czech fall soups coming. One of my favorite things about Czech cuisine are soups, and actually when I first moved away from home and I lived in London, one of the things that I missed the most were Czech soups. I found British soups to be horrible. They have many other things that I actually loved, but soups were not one of them, and I missed homemade soups. I make a soup right now almost daily, and most often it will be a Czech recipe or spin-off of a Czech recipe because we just really love them. And so I'm going to bring you a whole compilation of our favorite soups, and I will also have the blog posts written out to match each recipe so that you can find them in written format if you prefer that over video. Today I am making sauerkraut sausage soup. We love it. Sauerkraut is probiotic, and the sausage just adds a little bit of extra protein. It's made with homemade chicken bone broth. Unfortunately, not homegrown sausage. We're still working on that. The recipe is really simple. You fry up some onion, you fry up your sausage until it's nice and golden brown. Then you sprinkle it with flour and paprika to make a little bit of a roux. This will thicken up your soup and give it a deliciously deep red color. Heat up your broth. I recommend homemade bone broth. Add your sauerkraut to it with some bay leaf and whatever other seasonings you like. You can also chop up some potatoes if you like those. Boil long enough for the potatoes to soften. Then lastly, add in your sausage with the roux. Mix everything well together and serve. Like I was mentioning before, I am trying to transfer everything into glass jars, but this can get really overwhelming. And so my methodology, unless I really block out a chunk of time to go through, let's say, an entire drawer, is as I touch an item, I will transfer it. So just now I was using some smoked paprika for the soup, and I noticed that it's still in that paper wrapper. By the way, this is probably one of the things I miss about the US the most. People always ask me this, and here is one. Spices here are sold in little Ziploc bag things. Sometimes they don't even have the Ziploc top. It's just a paper/plastic bag, and they are so messy and so inconvenient. I really miss the US style of putting them into actual shakers, and so I have a bunch of empty ones, and as I pick up each spice that has not yet been transferred, I transfer it into a new glass jar, and then I label it with my super simple old school labeler so that we know what's in it. Sauerkraut soup is great for gut health, staying satiated and warm. In the fall, you can add a spoonful of yogurt or sour cream and serve with a side of bread. With the winter approaching, I am so keenly aware of the fact that everything in the garden is going to wind to a complete halt. This may sound naive, but I truly sometimes forget that there will be a time when everything will be covered in snow and I will not be able to pop out into my garden to fetch what I need. So I've been working on stocking my little pantry cabinet that you can see over here with as many things as possible. I've been putting my dehydrator to use like every single day, dehydrating all sorts of different things from the garden that I take for granted right now, but I know I will miss come winter. So here are some green onions that we love to put on a slice of sourdough bread with butter. I love to sprinkle it on soups or even on vegetable dishes. I have so many of those growing in my garden, and so I am just sacrificing a portion and preserving it for the winter time. Speaking of preservation, we have been super busy preserving our harvest from the garden. I have a whole video coming up all about canning and other ways that we are preserving our harvest. But here is a new way that I tried this year, and so far this has been a massive success. Okay, full transparency, I saw this as an Instagram reel of an elderly gentleman doing this with his tomatoes, and the simplicity of this method totally drew me in. So this is so simple. You simply add a bunch of tomatoes to a blender, you blend, and then you pour into a beverage dispenser jar like the one I have. You put it in the fridge overnight. In the morning, you will see that the tomato puree is all at the top and the water's at the bottom. Using the spigot, you let all the water just drain out, and then you spoon the tomato puree into Ziploc bags from the top and freeze for later use. So simple. It is so much simpler than any other method of preserving tomatoes that I do up until this moment. And once again, I did preserve tomatoes in a lot of different ways this year. that you'll see in my upcoming video, but this one is just so easy. If I'm really tired at the end of the day and I still have a bunch of tomatoes to get through, this has been my new go-to. As I just used up our last jar of sauerkraut for the soup, it's time to make a new batch. Homemade sauerkraut is something that I've been intimidated to make for a really long time, but as I've done it several times now, I realize it's actually much easier than people make it seem, or at least to me, the way people always talked about preserving sauerkraut seemed a little intimidating, when in fact it's really simple. I know some people weigh the salt. My husband is one of those, by the way. He gets it all precise and weighs out the salt so that the ratios are all correct. I discovered, at least for me, that I don't have to do that. I will just sprinkle salt liberally over the sauerkraut and then go to town massaging. And I'll massage and massage and massage and squeeze and press until the juices start to come out. My sauerkraut was in the fridge before, or rather my cabbage was in the fridge before, which is actually a mistake. I should have let it sit out, but no biggie. I still went ahead, chopped everything up, massaged it, stuffed it into my jar, and then I let it sit for several hours so that the juices actually have a chance to release. When it's all cold from the fridge like that, the juices won't be let out, but after several hours, when it comes to room temperature, everything will work just fine. Make sure to stomp it down really, really well though. We are stocking up on all the things that we will need through the winter, and those things include potatoes. So we hedged up and went to town to pick a giant amount of potatoes up for our broiler chickens, only to find out they are fully sold out. So I still included this little clip for you, even though I wanted you guys to see how we're loading this giant amount of potatoes, and we didn't actually do that, but it's not a big deal. I found them somewhere else, and so we are fully stocked. Next thing that I'm massively enjoying, I mean any time of year, but especially in early fall, is horse riding. I love to horse ride. If you've been here for any amount of time, you will know that. But the temperatures are just the best. All the pesky flies and mosquitoes are gone. It's not super hot, but it's still really nice and warm. And so I decided to do something new, something bold, and take both of my boys on a horse ride. You heard right. Edwin, who is just walking into the frame over here, with our lovely farm helper that we have, got to ride with us as well. This was his first ride at about 10 or 11 months old. And Aaron, who's 3.5, got to ride his own horse for the very first time. I was so proud of both of them. They did great. We kept it safe and fun, and we all had so much fun. Mostly for me as a mom, it's so important to share things that I love with my children, because I want them to see me come alive when I do something that I love. I think very often people will keep their hobbies, not on purpose maybe, but separate from their kids. They'll go do it without their kids until they're much, much older. And I think it's really important to include them as soon as possible, whenever appropriate, just because I personally think that we become a slightly different person when we are in our element, doing what we really love, doing what lights us up. This horse riding for me is something that transports me back to my childhood and younger years immediately. It makes everything feel lighter and more fun, and life just looks different from the saddle. And I wanted my boys to start experiencing that as soon as possible. So here they are, literally living the life that I wish I had lived. I did not start riding this young, and I always felt a little tinge of sadness about that. And so I'm super proud and happy that I can facilitate this for them. Thanks so much for following along this early fall day at our European homestead. Please hit the subscribe button. We publish a new video every single week. Bye for now.